Ethan Brooks
Go.
lost his job on the same night
Now,
his daughter's
keep the
inhaler
money
ran
hidden
empty.
and get to the
The night
extraction
Ethan
point.
Brooks lost his
Call me
job,
when you're safe.
the air smelled like wet cardboard and cheap disinfectant, the kind factories used when they wanted you to believe everything was clean, while everything important was quietly rotting. He stood in the shipping bay of Northline Distribution, with a fluorescent light flickering above his head, as if even the ceiling couldn't hold a steady opinion about him. Marcus Dale, shift lead, permanent smirk, the kind of man who could ruin your week and still sleep like a baby, held a clipboard like it was scripture. "Ethan," Marcus said, dragging the name out, "we've got a problem." Ethan wiped his hands on his jeans. There was dust under his nails from stacking pallets all evening, and a thin ache in his right shoulder that never fully left after his reserve duty injury. He didn't complain. Complaining didn't feed an 8-year-old. "What kind of problem?" he asked, already hearing the answer in his bones. Marcus nodded toward the security office window. Inside, Tina Carter from HR sat rigid in a chair, not looking at Ethan, not looking at anyone. Her lipstick was perfect. Her eyes were not. "The scanner shows missing inventory," Marcus said. "2 high-value items. We checked the cameras. Funny thing, there's a blind spot right where your station is." Ethan blinked once, twice. The words didn't land at first. They circled like birds, refusing to touch the ground. "I didn't take anything," Ethan said. Marcus's smile widened, soft and practiced. "That's what everyone says." Ethan's throat tightened. He pictured Lily at home, small lungs that could betray her without warning, inhaler always within reach, the purple spacer with the cracked edge. He pictured her homework spread across the kitchen table, the way she hummed when she wrote, like she was trying to sing herself into being okay. "Check my locker," Ethan said. "Check my car. I don't have anything." Marcus made a show of sighing, as if Ethan was exhausting him. "Look," Marcus said, lowering his voice like this was a favor. "We have witnesses." "Witnesses?" Ethan repeated, stunned. "Who?" Marcus glanced at Tina. Tina's hands trembled in her lap. She still didn't look at him. "Multiple witnesses," Marcus said. "Ethan, don't make this uglier than it needs to be." "Ugly." Ethan almost laughed, but it came out as a hollow breath. 3 years ago, the word ugly had lived in a hospital hallway. Emily Brooks in a stiff plastic chair, eyes red from crying, holding Lily's tiny hand while a doctor explained the lungs, the medication, the costs. Ugly had been the moment Ethan realized the world had a price tag on breath. 2 years ago, ugly had been the phone call at 2:17 a.m., a state trooper telling him there'd been a crash on Highway 9, that Emily had fallen asleep driving home from her 3rd job, that she never woke up. Ethan had learned something then. The universe didn't always take with its fists. Sometimes it took with a tired blink at the wrong time. He had buried his wife with money he didn't have, then gone back to work because grief didn't come with paid leave. And now, in a building that didn't care if you lived or died as long as the boxes moved, they were handing him another loss like it was just paper. Marcus slid a form across a metal table. Termination. Immediate. Cause. "You're firing me," Ethan said, his voice flat. "You're being let go," Marcus corrected, like language could soften a blade. Ethan stared at the paper until the words blurred. He thought of rent. He thought of Lily's next refill. He thought of the inhaler in the kitchen drawer that was almost empty. "I need this job," Ethan said quietly. Marcus shrugged. "Should have thought of that." The security guard by the door shifted, hand resting near his belt, as if Ethan might suddenly turn into a criminal because they had decided he was one. Ethan signed nothing. He walked out with his lunch bag in one hand and his dignity in the other, trying to keep both from spilling. Outside, rain was falling in thin, relentless lines. The streetlights painted everything the color of bruises. He checked his wallet under the awning near the employee entrance. A single 20, a 5, 2 ones. $27. That was the amount of life standing between Lily and a coughing night, between a refill in an empty drawer, between "Daddy, I can't breathe," and a prayer that didn't answer fast enough. Ethan closed his eyes for a second. He could almost feel Emily's hand on the back of his neck, like she used to do when he was tense. "You'll figure it out," she would have said. But Emily was gone, and figuring it out had become a lonely religion. He started walking toward the bus stop, because gas was expensive and the car was a miracle held together by prayer and duct tape. His boots splashed through shallow puddles. His stomach was empty, but hunger had become such a familiar roommate that it barely spoke anymore. At the corner of Maple and 14th, The bus shelter appeared, glass panels streaked with rain. A bench cold enough to remind you the city didn't love you back. Ethan dropped in onto the bench and leaned forward, elbows on knees, breathing slowly, counting. 1, 2, 3. He'd learned to count when Lily's lungs tightened. Panic made everything worse. The streetlight above the shelter flickered. The world, for a moment, felt unstable in small increments. Then someone sat down beside him. Ethan barely noticed until he heard the sound. Quick breaths, too shallow, like a person trying not to fall apart in public. He turned his head. The woman looked like she'd been dragged through the day and left to dry. Late 30s, maybe. Damp hair pulled into a messy knot. A denim jacket with frayed cuffs. She held a handful of coins and crumpled bills, counting them like her life depended on the math. 1, 2, 3. Her fingers shook harder each time. She swallowed, and Ethan saw the faint shine of tears on her cheeks. "Excuse me," she whispered. Her voice was thin, cracked at the edges, as if it had been screaming earlier and had no strength left. Ethan's first instinct was to look away. Not because he didn't care, because he cared too much, because desperation was contagious, and he already had enough of it in his own chest. But she spoke again, and the words landed soft and brutal. "I'm short for the fare," she said. I just need a little change." Ethan stared at her hands, how she tried to make broken money become enough. He knew that motion. He'd done it in grocery aisles, subtracting cereal boxes and adding cheaper bread. He'd done it at the pharmacy counter, pretending he wasn't calculating whether his daughter's lungs were worth more than rent. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet. $27. He imagined Lily waking up at midnight, wheezing. He imagined her small face turning frightened, her voice asking, "Daddy, do we have my medicine?" He imagined saying no. A cold truth rose in him. If he gave this away, he was choosing hardship with open eyes. But then he looked at the woman again, at the way she held herself like someone on the edge of a cliff, trying not to let strangers see the drop. And something inside Ethan, something older than fear, stood up. Kindness wasn't logical. It wasn't efficient. It didn't come with guarantees. It was a hand reaching into the dark anyway. He pulled out the bills and held them toward her. "All of it," he said. The woman froze. Her eyes widened as if he had offered her something impossible. No," she stammered. "That's too much. I can't. I only need—" "Please," Ethan said, voice low. "Just take it." She stared at the money like it might vanish. Then her hands closed around it, trembling, and her face broke completely. Tears spilled fast, unguarded. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Ethan said. But as he said it, a thought flashed sharp through his mind. What am I going to tell my daughter? The bus arrived with a hiss of brakes, doors folding open like a mouth. The woman stood, clutching the bills. "I'm Victoria," she said suddenly, like she needed him to have a name to remember. "I swear I'll pay you back. I don't know how yet, but I will." Ethan nodded, not trusting promises. Promises were easy. Life was not. She stepped onto the bus, turned once as if she wanted to say more, then disappeared behind the closing doors. The bus pulled away into rain. Ethan was left beneath the flickering streetlight with an empty wallet and a familiar ache in his chest. Fear, yes, but also something stranger, a quiet, dangerous spark of meaning. He stood up, tightened his jacket, and began the long walk home, each step carrying him toward the question that would define everything that came next, and the morning that would answer it. Ethan Brooks walked the 5 miles home with the rain thinning into a mist that clung to his skin like regret. By the time he reached their apartment complex, his legs burned and his shoes were soaked through. The building crouched at the edge of the street like it was embarrassed to be seen, peeling paint, a stairwell that smelled faintly of mildew and old cooking oil. The porch light flickering the same tired way everything else in his life seemed to flicker lately. He climbed the stairs quietly, counting each step so the ache in his knees wouldn't take over his thoughts. Inside, the apartment was dim and still. The first thing he heard was Lily's breathing, not steady, not easy. Ethan froze in the doorway, his heart jerking into his throat. He set his lunch bag down without a sound and moved through the living room, past the sagging couch and the stack of unpaid envelopes on the table, toward her bedroom. Lily lay curled on her side, her small chest rising and falling too quickly. Each breath sounded thin, like air being pulled through something narrowed and stubborn. "Hey, baby," Ethan whispered, kneeling beside her bed. "Daddy's here." Her eyelids fluttered open. She squinted at him, half asleep, half afraid. "My chest hurts," she murmured. "It's tight." Ethan reached for the inhaler on her nightstand. Empty. He stared at it for a fraction of a second too long, as if willing medicine to appear through sheer force of love. It didn't. A cold wave washed over him, panic sharp and immediate, but he swallowed it down. Panic never helped Lily. She watched his face the way sailors watch the sky. "It's okay," he said, keeping his voice steady. "We'll use the machine." The nebulizer sat on the dresser, borrowed from Mrs. Alvarez next door after Lily's last bad flare-up. He plugged it in, hands moving from memory, poured in the remaining dose of solution, barely enough for one treatment. After tonight, there would be nothing left. The machine hummed to life, a soft mechanical sound that had become the background noise of their nights. Ethan held the mask to Lily's face, watching her eyes close again as the mist curled around her mouth and nose. He counted her breaths the way the respiratory therapist had taught him. 1, 2, 3. His mind tried to betray him. $27. The number pulsed behind his eyes like a warning light. $27 that could have been medicine. That should have been medicine. He thought of the woman at the bus stop, of the way her hands had shaken, of the relief that had washed over her face like rain on cracked ground. Was that worth this moment? The question lodged in his chest, ugly and insistent. But Lily's breathing began to slow, her shoulders relaxed. The tightness eased enough that Ethan felt his own lungs unlock. When the treatment finished, Lily was asleep again, one hand curled around the edge of her blanket. Ethan sat there long after, listening to the silence settle back into the room. "I'm sorry," he whispered, though he didn't know who he was apologizing to anymore. Emily's photograph sat on the dresser, tucked into the corner of the mirror. It had been taken years ago at the county fair. Emily laughing, cotton candy in her hand, Lily on her shoulders, both of them bright and alive. Ethan looked at the picture and felt the familiar weight drop into his chest. Emily had died because she was tired, because she had been working too many hours to keep them afloat, because Ethan had taken an extra shift so she could rest, and she had insisted on driving home anyway. The doctors called it an accident. Ethan called it a debt that never stopped collecting. He tucked Lily's blanket higher, kissed her forehead, and left the room quietly. In the kitchen, he poured himself a glass of tap water and leaned against the counter, letting the coolness steady him. The apartment clock read 1:48 a.m. He didn't bother trying to sleep. Instead, he sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the stack of envelopes like they were a language he could no longer read. Rent, electric, medical. He flipped one open, then another. The numbers blurred together, a parade of demands with no room for mercy. His phone buzzed once, a voicemail from Northline Distribution. Ethan didn't open it. He already knew what it said. By 3 a.m., exhaustion pressed down on him like a physical thing, but sleep stayed just out of reach. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the bus stop. The woman's face, the empty space in his wallet. By 5, the sky outside had begun to lighten, the world shifting reluctantly toward morning. Ethan brewed coffee with grounds he'd already used once. The result tasted like bitterness and hope's poorer cousin, but it was warm. At 6, Lily padded into the kitchen in her oversized pajama shirt, hair a tangled halo around her face. "Morning," she said sleepily. "Morning, superstar," Ethan replied, forcing a smile. She climbed into her chair and peered at the cereal box. "We're almost out," she said matter-of-factly. "I know," Ethan said. "We'll figure it out." She nodded, accepting this the way children sometimes accept things adults can't, without analysis, without resentment. While she ate, humming softly, Ethan watched her hands, small and capable, holding the spoon like it was the most important job in the world. At 7:52 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Ethan's heart jumped. Too early for the landlord, too sharp for Mrs. Alvarez. "I'll get it," he said quickly, standing. He reached the door, wiped his palms on his jeans, and pulled it open. The street outside was lined with black. 5 SUVs, glossy and imposing, sat curbside like they'd taken a wrong turn into the wrong story. Men and women in tailored suits stood beside them, earpieces glinting in the early light. And at the center of it all, walking up the cracked concrete path like she owned the ground beneath it, was the woman from the bus stop. Only now, she wasn't shaking. Her hair was smooth, her posture straight, her charcoal coat sharp enough to cut. She met Ethan's eyes and smiled, Not kindly, not cruelly, but with purpose. "Good morning, Ethan Brooks," she said. "We need to talk." Behind him, Lily's voice floated from the kitchen, bright and curious. "Daddy, who is it?" Ethan didn't answer. Because in that moment, standing barefoot in yesterday's clothes with the weight of the night still heavy on his chest, he understood something with chilling clarity. The choice he had made under a flickering streetlight had followed him home. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, one hand still gripping the edge of the door like it might steady the ground beneath him. 5 black SUVs. Not parked casually, not idling the way delivery trucks did. They were aligned, deliberate, symmetrical, the kind of presence that announced power without needing to speak. The people beside them didn't fidget. They didn't look around. They waited. And the woman from the bus stop walked toward him as if the night before had been a different lifetime. She stopped at the bottom of the steps. Up close, Ethan could see the difference even more clearly. The exhaustion was gone. The raw panic that had cracked her voice was sealed away behind calm eyes and an expression that knew exactly how much space it was allowed to take. "Good morning," she said again, softer this time. "May I come in?" Ethan's mind raced through worst-case scenarios with the efficiency of someone who had learned to expect them. Police, a lawsuit, some twisted accusation for the money he'd given. His voice caught. He cleared his throat. "I didn't do anything wrong." A flicker crossed her face. Surprise. Then something like understanding. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm here." Behind him, Lily's chair scraped lightly against the kitchen floor. "Daddy," she called again. "Who's at the door?" Ethan hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in," he said. The woman climbed the steps and crossed the threshold. The suited men remained outside, statues in human form. One of them murmured something into his sleeve, eyes scanning the street. More security than theater, as if the morning itself had become a risk. Inside, the apartment seemed to shrink. The woman glanced around, not with judgment, but with attention. The chipped paint, the second-hand couch, the nebulizer on the counter drying beside the sink. Her gaze lingered there for half a second too long. Lily appeared in the doorway, cereal bowl in hand, eyes wide. "Daddy," she whispered, awed, "why are there so many cars?" The woman crouched immediately, smooth and instinctive, bringing herself down to Lily's level. "Hi," she said gently. "You must be Lily." Lily nodded. "Do you work with the police?" Ethan stiffened. The woman smiled. "No, I work with ideas." That answer seemed to satisfy Lily completely. "I like ideas," Lily said solemnly. "I thought you might," the woman replied. She stood and turned back to Ethan. "My name is Victoria Hale," she said. "I owe you an explanation, and more than that, an apology for showing up like this." Ethan swallowed. "You don't have to." "I do," Victoria said, "and I won't take long." She gestured toward the small kitchen table. "May we sit?" Ethan nodded and pulled out a chair. Victoria sat, folding her hands neatly in front of her. "I need you to know something first," she said. "Everything I'm about to say is the truth. And everything that happened last night happened because I trusted the wrong people." Ethan listened without interrupting. Years of factory floors and break rooms had taught him when to speak and when silence was safer. "Last night," Victoria continued, "my car was taken. My phone, my wallet, everything that identified me as who I am. I was left downtown with nothing." She paused, then met his eyes. "That was not an accident." Ethan felt a chill slide down his spine. "Someone set me up," she said. "Someone close to me. Someone who benefits if I disappear quietly." "That's terrible," Ethan said, the words feeling inadequate. "It was," Victoria replied, "but it was also clarifying." She leaned back slightly, her gaze steady. "When you lose your name," she said, "you learn how the world really sees you." Ethan thought of Marcus, of Tina's averted eyes, of witnesses who weren't. "I sat at that bus stop for almost an hour," Victoria said. "Dozens of people walked past me. They looked right through me. Some saw the desperation and stepped farther away." Her voice didn't shake, but Ethan heard the echo of it. "And then you sat down," Victoria said. "And you didn't look away." Ethan shifted in his chair. "I didn't know who you were," he said. Victoria nodded. "That's the point." She reached into her coat and pulled out a thin folder, placing it gently on the table. "I had my team look into you," she said, "before I came here. Ethan's jaw tightened. You investigated me. I did, Victoria said calmly, because I needed to know who gives away their last $27 to a stranger. Lily looked up. Daddy, you gave away your money? Ethan opened his mouth, but Victoria spoke first. He did something very brave, she said softly. Something very kind. Lily smiled at him, proud. Ethan felt something twist painfully in his chest. Victoria opened the folder. I know you were terminated yesterday, she said. I know the accusation was false. I know the people who testified against you have reasons that have nothing to do with the truth. Ethan stared at her. How could you possibly... I own Hale Strategies, Victoria said. We advise corporations on risk, ethics, and internal fraud. My firm has resources. She closed the folder. And I know you're raising Lily alone, she continued. I know about Emily. The name landed like a dropped plate. Ethan's breath hitched before he could stop it. I'm sorry, Victoria said immediately. I should have warned you, but I didn't want to pretend I didn't know. Silence filled the room, heavy and alive. I didn't come here to scare you, Victoria said quietly. I came because last night, when I had nothing, you showed me exactly who you are. Ethan laughed once, humorless. I gave you money, he said. That doesn't make me... It makes you someone who chooses people over protection, Victoria said. Someone who does the right thing even when it costs. She stood, pushing her chair back gently. I need someone like that, she said. Someone I can trust without contracts or cameras. Ethan rose too, nerves flaring. For what? He asked. Victoria looked at the door, then back at him. To help me uncover the truth, she said. And to give you a chance you didn't ask for, but earned. Outside, one of the suited men checked his watch. Victoria picked up her coat. I won't pressure you, she said, but I will say this. Last night changed my life. She met Ethan's eyes again, and for the first time, something unguarded surfaced there. I have a feeling, she said. It's about to change yours, too. She turned and walked toward the door, leaving the air behind her charged and unfamiliar. Ethan watched as she stepped back into the morning light, the SUVs pulling away one by one, their engines low and purposeful, more caution than spectacle. When the street was quiet again, Lily tugged on his sleeve. Daddy? She asked. Is she a good person? Ethan looked down at his daughter, then at the empty space where 5 black vehicles had been. I don't know yet, he said honestly, but I think she might be. And as he closed the door, the question of what he would do next began to press in, quietly, relentlessly. The apartment felt too quiet after the SUVs disappeared. Ethan stood by the door for a long moment, hands still on the knob, as if the world might knock again and undo whatever had just begun. Outside, the street returned to its ordinary sounds. An engine starting down the block, a dog barking, someone laughing too loudly at nothing. Inside, Lily climbed down from her chair and wrapped her arms around his leg. Daddy, she said softly. Are you in trouble? Ethan crouched and pulled her close, pressing his forehead to her hair. It smelled faintly of cereal and last night's soap. No, sweetheart, he said. I don't think so. She looked up at him with the serious concentration she used when adults said things that didn't quite add up. She looked important, Lily said, like the principal. Ethan almost smiled. Yeah, he said, something like that. Mrs. Alvarez knocked an hour later, bringing a paper bag with 2 apples and a loaf of day-old bread. She didn't ask questions. She never did. She just squeezed Ethan's arm and told Lily she'd braid her hair after school. By the time Ethan closed the door again, the morning had moved on without him. Lily left for school with a borrowed inhaler and a brave smile, and the apartment settled into the kind of silence that made thoughts echo. Victoria's words replayed in his head. Everything I'm about to say is the truth. Ethan wasn't sure when truth had become something you had to announce in advance, but experience had taught him not to trust anything that arrived with too much confidence. His phone buzzed shortly after noon, unknown number. He stared at the screen until it buzzed again. Hello? He said finally. Ethan, Victoria's voice came through, lower now, stripped of ceremony. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. There's never a good time, Ethan said, but you're not. A pause. Then, may I come back? Alone. Ethan looked at the busy chair Lily usually sat in, looked at the inhaler, looked at the unpaid bills. Okay, he said. Victoria arrived 20 minutes later in a different car. No entourage, no black line of authority, just a gray sedan that blended into the street. She wore the same charcoal coat, but her posture had softened. She carried a small envelope in one hand and nothing else. Inside, she didn't sit right away. She stood by the window, looking out at the street like she needed to orient herself to a world without tinted glass. "I wanted to talk without an audience," she said. "So did I," Ethan replied. She turned, nodded once, then sat across from him at the kitchen table. "I owe you more context," she said, "and you deserve it before you decide anything." Ethan folded his hands together to keep them from shaking. "Start wherever the truth actually starts," he said. Victoria breathed in slowly. "Last night," she began, "I stayed late at the office, audit prep, long hours. My executive assistant, Derek, insisted I take his car because mine was in the shop. He's done that before. Trusted him." Ethan's jaw tightened at the word. "I drove to a client dinner downtown," Victoria continued. "When I came out, the car was gone. So was my phone, my wallet, everything." She leaned forward. "The police call it opportunistic theft," she said. "I don't." "Why not?" Ethan asked. She asked. "Because the timing was too clean," Victoria replied. "And because someone tried to use my cards less than an hour later, in 3 different places." Testing the limits, Ethan thought. Victoria nodded, as if reading him. "Exactly. That kind of pattern isn't panic," she said. "It's practice." Ethan leaned back, the chair creaking beneath him. "So, you think your assistant—" "I think someone close to me wanted me destabilized," Victoria said carefully. "Confused, distracted, maybe gone." "Why?" Ethan asked. Victoria hesitated. "My company," she said. "Hale Strategies is profitable, quietly. That makes it attractive to people who prefer not to be noticed." She opened the envelope and slid a photograph across the table. It showed Derek, clean-cut, smiling, standing beside Victoria at what looked like a corporate event. "He's been with me 4 years," she said. "Knows my routines, knows my weaknesses, and knows exactly how much chaos I can tolerate before I start delegating blindly." Ethan thought of Marcus, of Tina, of witnesses who weren't. "I've seen this movie," he said quietly. Victoria's eyes flicked up. "I know." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a second envelope. Inside were printed documents, transaction logs, timelines, a list of vendors. I don't have proof yet," she said. "Just patterns. And instincts." Ethan studied the pages. Numbers always told the truth eventually, if you were patient enough to listen. "And that's where I come in," he said. Victoria nodded. "That's where you come in," she confirmed. "Because you understand what betrayal looks like from the other side." Ethan closed the envelope slowly. "I'm not an investigator," he said. "I'm a warehouse guy." "You're a father," Victoria replied, "and someone who doesn't look away." Silence settled between them again, but this time it felt deliberate, almost respectful. "I won't lie to you," Victoria said. "Working with me will be complicated. It will be uncomfortable, and it will put you close to people who smile while they sharpen knives." Ethan exhaled. "I already know those people," he said. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. "There's one more thing," she said. "Something you should hear from me before you hear it from anyone else." Ethan's chest tightened. "When I sat at that bus stop," Victoria said, "I wasn't just afraid. I was angry." "About being robbed," Ethan guessed. "About being invisible," she corrected. "About how quickly the world stripped me down to a problem no one wanted to solve," her voice lowered. "And then you handed me $27 like it was nothing." Ethan shook his head. "It wasn't nothing. I know," she said. "That's why it mattered." She stood, pacing the length of the small kitchen. "I've built my life on control," she said, "on leverage, on making sure I'm never the one who needs." She stopped and faced him. "And last night, needing saved me." Ethan didn't respond. He wasn't sure there was a right response to something like that. Victoria picked up her coat. "I'm asking you to help me," she said. "Not as charity, as partnership." She placed a business card on the table. "Think about it," she added. "I'll give you time." Ethan looked at the card. Hale Strategies, CEO. "Time," he repeated. "Yes," Victoria said, "until tomorrow morning." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Ethan," she said softly, "whatever you decide, thank you." The door closed behind her with a gentle click. Ethan sat alone at the table long after, staring at the card and the envelopes, weighing fear against necessity, pride against survival. Outside, the afternoon slid toward evening, and somewhere between the echo of a bus stop and the quiet breathing of his daughter that night, Ethan knew one thing with aching clarity. The choice he made next would pull him fully into a world that would not let him remain unchanged. Ethan did not sleep. He lay on the couch with the lights off, staring at the faint glow from the street lamp leaking through the blinds, listening to the apartment breathe. The refrigerator clicked on and off. Pipes whispered inside the walls. Somewhere above him, a television murmured through another family's night. On the kitchen table, Victoria Hale's business card caught the light every time a car passed. Hale Strategies. Victoria Hale, CEO. It felt like an object from another life, clean, expensive, untouched by dust. It didn't belong in a room where the couch sagged in the middle and the carpet remembered better debts. Ethan turned onto his side and closed his eyes. He saw Lily's face the night Emily died, confused more than afraid, like she was waiting for an adult explanation that never came. He remembered how he'd knelt in front of her, hands shaking, and promised things he wasn't sure the world would let him keep. "I'll take care of you. I won't let anything happen." Promises were easy when they were words. Keeping them was the part that hollowed you out. By dawn, his thoughts had worn grooves into his skull. Every path led back to the same crossroads. If he said no, he kept his pride. If he said yes, he risked everything else. The alarm went off at 6, though there was nowhere he needed to be. Ethan shut it off quickly so it wouldn't wake Lily. He brewed coffee from the last of the grounds and drank it standing at the sink, staring out at a sky that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Lily came out of her room rubbing one eye. "Morning," she said. "Morning," Ethan replied. She climbed onto her chair and watched him for a moment, head tilted. "You look tired," she observed. Ethan smiled faintly. "Guess I forgot how to sleep." She nodded, as if this made sense. "Did you think about the lady?" Lily asked. Ethan froze for half a second. "What lady?" "The one with the cars," Lily said. "Victoria." Her saying the name so easily startled him. Children absorb truths without ceremony. "Yes," Ethan said. "I thought about her." "Is she coming back?" Lily asked. "I don't know," he said honestly. Lily considered this while chewing a piece of toast. "She was nice," she said finally. "She looked at me like I mattered." Ethan swallowed. "So do you," he said. "Always." Lily smiled, satisfied, and hopped down to grab her backpack. "I hope you figure it out," she said, already halfway down the hall. Grown-ups think too much. After she left for school, Ethan sat alone at the table again. He picked up the business card, turned it over, then turned it back. He thought of the warehouse floor, the accusations. Marcus's voice telling him he should have thought of that. He thought of Lily's inhaler, how light it felt when it was empty. At 8:17 a.m., his phone buzzed. Victoria Hale. Ethan stared at the screen until it stopped buzzing. Then it rang again. He answered. "Yes," he said. "I'll be there in 15 minutes, Victoria replied. No pressure in her voice, no triumph, just certainty. She arrived on time, as promised. Same gray sedan, same quiet presence. Inside, she didn't waste time. "I'll be direct," she said, sitting across from him. "I'm offering you a position." Ethan nodded. "You said that." "A real one," she continued. "Salary, benefits, health insurance that won't make you choose between medication and rent." The words landed heavy, almost physical. "I don't have a degree," Ethan said. "I don't have corporate experience." "You have judgment," Victoria replied, "and integrity." She slid a folder toward him. Inside was an offer letter. The number at the bottom made his breath catch. It wasn't extravagant. It wasn't obscene. It was enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to stop counting every dollar like it was a verdict. "This isn't charity," Victoria said quietly. "I won't insult you by pretending it is." Ethan closed the folder. "What's the job?" he asked. "Internal review," she said, "uncovering a betrayal that threatens everything I've built. I'll also bring in outside forensic support. Quietly. Legal will review every step." "And when that's done," Ethan pressed. Victoria met his eyes. "If you want to stay, you stay. If you want to leave, you leave with my reference and my respect. Ethan leaned back, rubbing his hands together. And the people involved? He asked. They won't like me. They already don't, Victoria said calmly. They just don't know your name yet. Ethan thought of Marcus again, of the way power liked to hide behind procedure. Why me? He asked. Victoria didn't answer immediately. Because, she said finally, when the world took everything from you, you still gave. Silence filled the room. Ethan stood and walked to the window. Outside, the street looked ordinary. A man walked his dog. A delivery truck idled at the corner. Ordinary didn't mean safe. What happens if I say no? Ethan asked, still facing the glass. Then you walk away, Victoria said, and I'll respect that. And if I say yes? Victoria's voice softened. Then you step into a fight you didn't start, she said. One that will test you, exhaust you, and change you. Ethan closed his eyes. He thought of Lily's quiet courage, of Emily's tired smile, of $27 changing hands under a broken streetlight. He turned back. When do I start? He asked. Victoria exhaled slowly, relief flickering across her face before she reined it in. Today, she said, if you're willing. Ethan nodded. I am. Victoria extended her hand. He shook it. Firm, steady, real. Welcome, she said, to Hale Strategies. After the door closed behind her, Ethan sat back down at the table, staring at the signed offer letter. He didn't feel saved. He felt summoned. Ethan's first day at Hale Strategies felt like stepping into a place where sound had been engineered. The elevator rose without a shudder. The doors opened without a sigh. The lobby smelled faintly of citrus and money. Clean, intentional, nothing wasted. Glass walls caught the morning light and threw it back brighter, as if the building itself refused to hold shadows. Ethan adjusted the borrowed tie at his throat and followed Victoria across polished marble. Every step echoed louder in his head than it did in the room. Ignore the stares, Victoria said quietly, not breaking stride. People here stare when they're uncertain. Ethan glanced around. A few heads turned, some curious, some dismissive. One man, tall, sharp-eyed, looked at him with something colder. That's Richard Torres, Victoria murmured. CFO, brilliant, loyal, and suspicious of anything that doesn't come with a resume. Good, Ethan said. I've been suspicious my whole life. She smiled, just a little. His office was small, no window, no art, but it had a desk that didn't wobble and a computer that hummed with promise. On the chair sat a neat stack of folders. Everything we have so far, Victoria said. Receipts, vendor lists, expense reports, timelines. Ethan sat and opened the first folder. Numbers greeted him. Clean columns, orderly rows. He felt his shoulders loosen for the first time in days. Numbers didn't care who you were. They didn't flatter or accuse. They told the truth if you knew how to listen, and Ethan had learned to listen in places where truth hid behind quotas and missing pallets. He worked through the morning without noticing time. He circled vendor names that repeated too often. He highlighted reimbursements that fell just under approval thresholds. He built a timeline on a legal pad, connecting dates with slow, deliberate lines. At noon, Victoria appeared at his door. Eat, she said, setting a sandwich and coffee on the desk. I forget sometimes. Ethan nodded, took a bite, then went back to the page. By 3, a pattern emerged like a bruise beneath the skin. Victoria, he said, standing. She joined him at the desk. These charges, Ethan said, tapping the paper, they're structured. How so? She asked. They start small, he said. A few hundred here, 1,000 there, buried in legitimate expenses. But watch this. He flipped a page. They grow in frequency and amount right after major audits. Victoria leaned closer. He was testing the system, she murmured. And the people, Ethan added. Seeing who noticed, who didn't. Her jaw tightened. Derek, she said. Ethan nodded. 18 months, he said. At least. And the spike in the last 6 weeks, that's panic. Victoria straightened. We have an external audit scheduled, she said slowly. 2 weeks. He knew, Ethan replied, which is why he needed you distracted, off balance, maybe gone. Victoria's hands curled into fists at her sides. He drove me to that dinner, she said. Insisted, said it was safer. Ethan looked at her. He was writing the alibi before the crime. The words settled heavily between them. Richard Torres appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. You're saying my assistant stole nearly $80,000, he said flatly. I'm saying the numbers did, Ethan replied. Richard studied the documents, then Ethan. And you saw this in one day? Ethan shrugged. I've seen worse, done with less. Richard exhaled sharply. We'll need proof that stands in court. You'll have it, Ethan said. If you give me time. Victoria nodded once. You have it. That night, Ethan worked late. When he finally left, the city outside felt different, less hostile, more alert, like it was waiting to see what he'd do next. At home, Lily was asleep, her breathing steady. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed, watching the rise and fall of her chest, and felt something unfamiliar settle into his bones. Purpose. The next week blurred into long days and longer nights. Ethan traced money through shell vendors. He cross-referenced timestamps with security logs. He found emails Derek had deleted but never erased, drafts saved automatically, mistakes that spoke louder than intent. Victoria trusted him with silence and space. She didn't hover. She didn't rush. When the final piece fell into place, it was almost quiet. Ethan stood in the conference room with the evidence spread out before them. He was planning to leave, Ethan said. Plane tickets, cash transfers. He would have blamed the robbery, let the audit burn you down, then disappeared. Victoria closed her eyes for a moment. And if you hadn't met me, she said. Ethan didn't answer. The police came the next morning. Derek was escorted out in handcuffs, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. As they passed, his eyes locked on Ethan. You! He spat. You don't even belong here. Ethan met his gaze calmly. Neither did you, he said. Afterward, the office felt lighter. Conversations resumed. Laughter returned, cautious but real. Richard clapped Ethan on the shoulder. You saved this company. Ethan shook his head. I just listened. That evening, Victoria drove Ethan home herself. No driver, no escort. At a red light, she glanced at him. You could have walked away, she said, after what happened to you. Ethan looked out the window at the passing streets. I know what it's like to be blamed, he said. I wasn't going to let it happen again. They sat in comfortable silence the rest of the way. When Ethan stepped out of the car, Victoria spoke again. Ethan, she said, this doesn't end here. He nodded. I figured, he said. As he watched her drive away, Ethan felt the truth settle fully for the first time. He hadn't just exposed a crime, he had crossed into a life that would not let him stay on the edges. The morning after Derek's arrest arrived without ceremony. No sirens, no headlines, no dramatic reckoning at the door. Just sunlight filtering through the glass walls of Hale Strategies and the low hum of people returning to their desks, uncertain how much of yesterday they were allowed to acknowledge. Ethan noticed it immediately, the way conversations paused when he passed, then resumed softer. The way eyes lingered a second longer than politeness required, not hostile, not friendly, measuring. Truth always left debris behind. He'd learned that on factory floors too. When a lie collapsed, it didn't vanish. It scattered, and people had to decide where to step. Victoria called a brief meeting at 9. No speeches, no applause. She stood at the head of the conference table, hands resting lightly on the glass, posture composed but unmistakably altered. Derek Anderson is no longer with this company, she said. Law enforcement is handling the matter. We will cooperate fully. A pause. I won't pretend this is easy, she continued. Betrayal rarely announces itself. It hides in trust. Her eyes moved through the room, slow, deliberate. But this company survives because truth was allowed to surface, she said. That matters. She didn't say Ethan's name. She didn't have to. The meeting ended, chairs scraped back. People filed out, quieter than before. Richard Torres lingered. You were right, he said to Ethan, voice low. About the timing, about everything. Ethan nodded. Numbers don't lie, people do. Richard studied him, then extended his hand. You have a place here, he said, if you want it. Ethan shook his hand, firm and brief. I'm not planning on disappearing, he said. The rest of the day unfolded strangely. Lighter, but not simple. Systems adjusted, vendors were flagged. Emails went out that used words like realignment and process improvement to avoid naming what had actually happened. At lunch, 2 analysts invited Ethan to sit with them. By afternoon, someone asked his opinion in a meeting and waited for the answer. He felt the shift in his bones. Not power, belonging. That evening, Victoria stopped by his office. Walk with me, she said. They took the stairs instead of the elevator, descending floor by floor while the city slid into dusk beyond the windows. "You did exactly what I hoped you would," she said quietly, "and more than I expected." Ethan shrugged. "I finished the job." "You restored trust," she corrected. "Those are different things." Outside, the air smelled like rain about to arrive. Victoria unlocked her car, then paused. "There's something I need to say," she said. Ethan waited. "I won't pretend this didn't start with $27, she said, "but it doesn't end there." She met his eyes. "I want you to stay," she said, "not as a temporary solution, as part of this company." Ethan thought of the warehouse, of the clipboard, of the word cause stamped beside his name. "I'll stay," he said, "as long as I can leave when I need to." Victoria smiled. "Fair." At home, Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table, tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. "Daddy," she said without looking up, "Mrs. Alvarez says you're walking different." Ethan blinked. "She said that." "She said your shoulders aren't so high," Lily repeated. "Like this." She lifted her shoulders exaggeratedly, then dropped them. Ethan laughed, soft, surprised. "That's good," he said. "I think." Later, after Lily fell asleep, Ethan stood in the doorway of her room, watching the slow, steady rhythm of her breathing. He felt the familiar ache, Emily's absence, the years that couldn't be undone. But it was different now, less sharp, like a wound that had stopped bleeding. His phone buzzed, a message from Victoria. "Thank you. For staying." Ethan typed, erased, then typed again. "I'm not done yet." He set the phone down and looked out the window at the street below, where ordinary lives moved forward unaware of how close he had come to losing everything. Truth had done its work. But truth was never the end of a story. It was the clearing. The first soccer game Victoria attended felt like an accident. She arrived late, breathless, wearing jeans instead of a suit and a navy sweater that didn't try to impress anyone. Her hair was pulled back in a loose knot that had already begun to come undone. She carried no entourage, no confidence shield, just a folded camp chair under one arm and an apologetic smile. Ethan spotted her from the bleachers and felt his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "I got stuck in a call," she said quietly as she set the chair beside him. "I didn't want to miss it." "You didn't," Ethan replied. On the field, Lily sprinted with the kind of fierce joy only children had, lungs working hard, ponytail flying behind her. She looked up once, spotted Ethan, then froze mid-run when she saw Victoria. Her face lit up like someone had turned the sun on inside her. She waved both arms wildly. Victoria stood without thinking and waved back, laughing. Ethan watched the exchange and felt something shift. Small, but irreversible. "Is that your friend?" Lily asked later during a water break, eyes bright. "Yes," Ethan said carefully. "She is." Victoria crouched beside Lily, offering the water bottle. "You played amazing," she said. "That pass? Perfect." Lily grinned, breathless. "Daddy taught me." Victoria looked up at Ethan. Something unspoken passed between them. After the game, they got ice cream, Lily's choice, chocolate with sprinkles, and walked through the park while Lily ran ahead, narrating her victories to anyone who would listen. Victoria listened like it mattered. Ethan noticed that. In the weeks that followed, Victoria appeared in their lives not with declarations, but with presence. She brought groceries once and pretended it was an accident. The store was closing. She stayed for dinner and laughed at Ethan's burnt pancakes. She helped Lily with a science project, crouched on the floor, cutting construction paper, long past midnight. She never crossed a line, and that somehow made everything harder. One evening, Ethan found Lily at the kitchen table with crayons scattered everywhere. She slid a piece of paper toward him. It showed 3 figures holding hands beneath a crooked sun. "Who's this?" Ethan asked, though he already knew. "You," Lily said. "Me." She tapped the 3rd figure. "And Victoria." Ethan's throat closed. "She comes to my games," Lily said simply. "That means family." Ethan sat down slowly. "Sweetheart," he began. "I know Mommy died," Lily said. "I'm not forgetting her." Ethan felt tears rise uninvited. "I just like having more people who stay." That night, Ethan lay awake again, not with fear, but with something more dangerous. Hope. At work, Victoria remained careful, professional, unassailable. But sometimes, in meetings, their eyes met a second too long. Sometimes her hand brushed his when she passed a document, Sometimes silence grew heavy with things neither of them named. Ethan tried to step back. He reminded himself she was his boss, that she had saved his livelihood, that Lily was already attaching herself. He reminded himself that losing again might break them both, but the heart did not respect reminders. One Saturday morning, Victoria showed up with coffee and asked if they wanted to walk in the park. "Just a walk," she said. The sky was pale blue. Lily ran ahead chasing pigeons. "You're good with her," Victoria said quietly. "She's easy to love," Ethan replied. Victoria nodded. "So are you." The words slipped out before either of them could stop them. They both froze. Victoria looked away first. "I'm sorry," she said. "That was—" "True," Ethan said, voice rough, "but complicated." She smiled faintly. "Yes." They stood there, neither moving. "Ethan," Victoria said carefully, "I don't want to confuse her." "Neither do I," he said. "That's what scares me." That night, Lily taped her drawing to the refrigerator, "My Family," she'd written in uneven letters. Ethan stared at it long after she went to bed. He thought of Emily, of promises, of how love arrived whether you were ready or not. And for the first time since his wife died, he allowed himself to admit a terrifying truth. He wanted the picture to be real, but wanting wasn't choosing, and choosing meant risk. The drawing stayed on the refrigerator for 3 days. Ethan tried not to look at it. He failed every time. 3 figures, 3 hands, a crooked sun that leaned like it was listening. Lily's handwriting, uneven, earnest, declaring something the adults were still pretending not to see. My family. On Tuesday night, after Lily went to bed, Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table with the lights off. The city hummed outside the window, indifferent and alive. He rested his elbows on the table and stared at the drawing, as if it might speak first. He had promised himself he would not let Lily build castles on ground that might disappear. He had promised himself he would not confuse gratitude with love. He had promised himself a lot of things since Emily died. And yet, his phone buzzed. "Victoria, are you awake?" Ethan typed, erased, then typed again. "Ethan, yes," a pause. "Victoria, can we talk? Not about work." Ethan's chest tightened. "Ethan, okay." They met at the park near Lily's school, the one with the old oak tree that leaned too far to the left but never fell. The air was cool, carrying the promise of rain. Victoria arrived wearing a light coat, her hands shoved into the pockets as if she needed to anchor herself. They walked in silence for a while. Finally, Ethan stopped. "I can't do this halfway anymore," he said. Victoria turned to him, face careful. "Do what?" "Pretend," he said. "Pretend that what's happening isn't happening." She swallowed. "I've been trying to be responsible," she said. "Careful. For Lily, for you, for the power imbalance." "I know," Ethan said. "So have I." He took a breath that felt like stepping off something high. "I'm in love with you," he said. The words hung between them, bare, unprotected. "I didn't plan it," he continued. "I didn't want it, but it's there. And Lily sees it, and pretending it isn't real is starting to hurt her." Victoria stared at him, eyes shining but steady. "I'm your boss," she said softly. "And you saved my job," Ethan replied. "Which is why, if this changes anything, if you want me gone, I'll go." "Ethan, I need you to hear me first," he said. His hands were shaking now, but he didn't hide them. "I love you. And if that means I lose everything I just rebuilt, then at least Lily won't grow up thinking honesty is something we avoid." Silence pressed in, thick and frightening. Victoria exhaled, a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. "Do you know how long I've waited for you to say that?" she asked. Ethan blinked. "What?" "I've been in love with you since the bus stop," she said. "Since you handed me $27 and didn't ask who I was." She stepped closer. "I've been terrified of hurting her," she continued. "Of hurting you. Of turning something real into something transactional, just because I have power." "You don't have power here," Ethan said hoarsely. "Not over this." Victoria smiled then, small, real. "Exactly," she said. "That's why it matters." She reached for his hands and held them firmly, grounding both of them. "I love you," she said. "I love Lily, and I don't want to pretend anymore either." Ethan's breath left him in a rush he didn't know he'd been holding. They didn't rush the kiss. It came slowly, careful and reverent, like something you approached barefoot. When it happened, it felt less like discovery and more like recognition. They broke apart when laughter drifted from the playground, a reminder that the world was still turning. The next morning, Lily found them sitting together on the couch, hands intertwined. She stopped short. "You're holding hands," she said. Ethan opened his mouth, but Victoria spoke first. "Yes," she said gently. "Is that okay?" Lily studied them with the seriousness of a child who had already lost too much to waste time. "Does this mean you're staying?" she asked. Victoria knelt in front of her. "If you'll have me," she said. "I'd like to." Lily smiled, wide and bright. "Okay," she said, "but Mommy Emily still counts." Ethan felt his chest crack open. "She always will," he said. That night, after Lily went to sleep, Ethan and Victoria stood in the kitchen beneath the humming light. "We need rules," Victoria said. "Boundaries, transparency at work." "I agree," Ethan replied. "I don't want this to be something we hide." They made a plan. HR disclosures, reassignment of reporting lines, space for Lily to adjust at her pace, responsible, adult. But beneath it all, something tender and fierce had taken root. As Victoria left, she paused at the door. "You know," she said, "sometimes the scariest truths are the ones that save us." Ethan watched her walk away, heart full and unsteady. In the kitchen, the drawing on the refrigerator fluttered slightly as the air shifted. "My family." Ethan touched the paper gently, understanding at last that the truth he had been holding was never meant to stay hidden. The proposal was not planned. There was no restaurant reservation, no hidden ring, no speech rehearsed in the mirror. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that used to terrify Ethan because ordinary meant fragile. They were in the park again, the same one with the leaning oak tree. Lily ran ahead, chasing a butterfly that refused to be caught, her laughter cutting through the air like something alive and defiant. Victoria sat on the grass beside Ethan, shoes kicked off, sleeves rolled up. She looked unguarded in a way no boardroom had ever allowed her to be. "You're quiet," she said. Ethan watched Lily for a moment, then spoke. "I spent 3 years believing my life was over," he said. Not loudly, just quietly, like a door closing without a sound. Victoria listened. She always did. "I thought survival was the best I could offer, Lily," he continued. "Food, medicine, a roof. I didn't think about joy, or future, or this." He gestured around them, sunlight through leaves, a child laughing, a woman beside him who knew his worst nights and stayed anyway. Victoria's eyes softened. "And now?" she asked. "Now I'm afraid of losing it," he admitted. "Which tells me it's real." She reached for his hand. "Love always comes with fear," she said. "That's how you know it matters." Lily ran back toward them then, breathless. "Daddy! Victoria! Look!" She opened her hands, empty. "It flew away, but I almost had it." Ethan laughed. "Almost still counts." Lily studied their faces, then nodded, satisfied, and ran off again. Ethan watched her go. "I don't want to wait anymore," he said suddenly. Victoria turned to him. "Wait for what?" "For permission," he said. "For the world to say it's safe." He stood, then slowly dropped to one knee in the grass. Victoria gasped, hands flying to her mouth. "Ethan, I don't have a ring yet," he said, voice steady despite the way his heart thundered. "I don't have a perfect plan, but I know this. I've already lost too much time believing I didn't deserve another life." He looked up at her. "Victoria Hale," he said, "will you marry us?" She laughed through tears. "Us?" Ethan nodded. "Lily and me. We're a package deal." Victoria knelt in front of him, hands trembling as she cupped his face. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will. I choose both of you." Lily turned just in time to see them hugging and ran toward them at full speed. "What happened?" she demanded. Victoria pulled her into the embrace. "We're getting married," she said. Lily froze. Then she screamed. She tackled them both, sending the three of them tumbling onto the grass, laughing and crying in a tangled heap, while the butterfly returned briefly, landing on a nearby flower as if to witness it. The wedding was small, no press, no spectacle, just close friends, a few colleagues who had become family, and Mrs. Alvarez in the front row dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Lily was the flower girl, taking her responsibility with grave seriousness, scattering petals one by one as if each mattered deeply. When Ethan saw Victoria walking toward him in her simple white dress, he thought of the bus stop. The flickering light, the $27 pressed into trembling hands. He had believed he was giving something away that night. He understood now he had been planting something. After the vows, after the laughter and the quiet tears, life settled, not into perfection, but into rhythm. 6 months later, they walked through the same park again, Lily between them, holding both their hands. The evening sun turned everything gold. "What do you think she'll be?" Victoria asked as Lily ran ahead, investigating ants with scientific focus. "Happy," Ethan said. "That's enough for me." Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know," she said softly, "if none of the bad things had happened, we never would have met." Ethan smiled faintly. "I don't thank the bad things," he said, "but I don't let them win either." Lily ran back, grinning. "Can we get pizza?" she asked. Victoria laughed. "Always pizza." They walked toward the car, nothing remarkable to anyone passing by. Just a family heading to dinner. But Ethan knew better. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness, the one you make when you have nothing left, doesn't just change a moment, it changes the ending. And sometimes, when you think the story is over, when the lights feel too dim and the road too long, life leans in quietly and reminds you, this was never the end at all. It was the beginning.